This was a hard talk to prepare for because it's a hard talk to give, and only a little bit of that is because it's kind of personal. I've been in relationships where I should have left and didn't leave, and that's never a good thing. But also because it seems like it shouldn't be necessary. Because you're supposed to stay in relationships if you're happy and you love someone, and you should leave if you don't love them. And of course, everyone knows what an abusive relationship looks like, so if you're being abused, you need to leave. I have a degree in psychology. I have counseled multiple friends out of abusive relationships. And when I found myself in one of them, it took me 4 years to leave. I knew all the signs, except they didn't quite apply to me. That was just, well, if people understood, I mean, if they understood, but if I could explain, seriously, it's not really abusive. So I think it's an important talk to give because a lot of people stay in relationships when they're not making either person happy and they're not healthy for either person. And a surprising number of people, even theoretically well-educated people with a lot of social support and a lot of etc., sometimes stay in relationships that are flat out abusive. So I think it's important to know, to hear again, because a lot of us have heard these things, to hear again what it isn't okay to let someone do to you in a relationship. What kind of relationship doesn't isn't working? How to tell when a relationship isn't working and you should leave. The bottom line is that we misunderstand the purpose of relationships, what they're good for. As far as I can tell, relationships are good for three things. They're good for someone to keep us company and spend time with us and help us enjoy our life, well, help us make it through the difficulties of life. And they're there to help us grow. They're there to help us become better people. And actually, those are the only two I can think of. I said three, I meant two. There we go. They're there to help us get through life. Sorry, I didn't mean three. Help us get through life, help us grow, and bring us joy. And those are the three reasons I'm aware of for being in a relationship. And if you're in a relationship where those three things aren't true, and you're still there, then maybe there's something wrong. Now, this is not to say, every relationship, I'm telling you your relationship is abusive. And being abusive isn't a prerequisite for being a relationship that you should leave. It's possible for a relationship to simply be empty, dead. No one really cares, just going through the motions. And a lot of people say, well, why should you leave that? And the answer is because it's not serving its purpose. It's not being a relationship the way relationships are meant to be. If your relationship isn't bringing you joy, if it isn't helping you grow, if it isn't providing you an opportunity for mutual support, why are you there? And it can be really useful to look at that question. Why are you there? Because maybe you shouldn't be. This is not to say that relationships are sunshine and roses. In fact, that mutual support there is about the fact that they're not always sunshine and roses. Someone's having a really, really bad time at their job, they're not going to be really cheerful to be around. They're going to need lots of extra support. Someone develops a chronic illness. The fact that they are miserable and in pain doesn't mean the relationship should end. You wouldn't want it to end if you were that person, and you probably wouldn't want it to end if someone you loved were that person. It doesn't have to be easy, but it does have to be good for you. I have a guideline that I use for deciding whether someone is a good friend, and it has never let me down so far. It's a question. Do I like the person I am when I am with them better? does being around this friend make me a better person? Where better is someone I like better. Do I like myself better around this person? Or do I find myself being angry and small minded and petty and insulting and rude and sad and miserable and lonely and contemptuous or whatever it is? Do I like the effect on me? And that's even more true of a relationship. Do you like the person you are? It's tricky because with a friend, you can spend time with them and see how you are around them. And then you can spend time not around them and see how you are not around them. And that's harder to do in a relationship. But there's always, go and visit your parents or your kids or your best friend who you haven't seen in a couple of years. Take a week off and go see them and see how you like the person you are when you're not with someone else. Because you may find some interesting things. If you find that you are a happier, better, more generous, more joyful person without your partner around, then you may need to look at why you are still there. And there's also the case of relationships that are just flat out abusive. And the tricky thing there is that I've read lists of these are the attributes of an abusive relationship. I've seen friends in abusive relationships and sent them that list and had them feel angry and scared, or refuse to read it, or get mad at me for sharing it with them, or read it and go, I think I have a problem here. Help. That third one is the one that's really nice to get. Someone saying, oh, wow, geez, I recognize my relationship in this list. But even if you've read that list 100 times, that doesn't mean you'll know it means you. So the most important thing about when you should leave a relationship is pick up a list of the attributes of an abusive relationship and see whether someone else would think they apply to you. Because you know you're not in an abusive relationship. You're not dumb. You wouldn't stay around to be abused, right? But think about whether you need to explain to people why these things aren't really bad in your relationship and make excuses. Well, your partner only does that because she's really tired after a day of work. And on the weekends, she's much nicer. Or, well, if only I weren't so, honestly, so annoying, she wouldn't feel the need to yell at me. You know, he only, I mean, God, I practically drive him to drink. It's not really, I mean, it's really neat. And if you'd have to make that kind of excuse, if you recognize the things you see in the list, then you need to think about the fact that you are almost certainly in an abusive relationship. And the fact that you can't see it, it doesn't look that way from the inside. Well, if being with someone abusive looked like they were abusing you all the time, people wouldn't stay in abusive relationships for years and years and years. They stay in them because relationships don't look that way from the inside. From the inside, they look like that's just how it is. That's the price you pay for being in a relationship. That's just, you can't expect anything better than that. So, oh, and by the way, you know how you call your doctor's office or your pharmacy, and the very first thing they say is, if this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. Well, there's a good reason for that, which is if it's an emergency, they're not going to get this message for a while. And they want to make sure you're taken care of. If you follow my advice, you pull down that page of, just Google signs you're in an abusive relationship. You'll get 100 hits. You pull one down, you read it, and you're like, wow, this really does. These 5 things look just like my relationship. That's a really great time to reach out for help to a professional. Reach out for help to a friend. Don't sit around and think about it and talk to people vaguely about, maybe there's some strains of my relationship. Go to a therapist and say, I think I'm in an abusive relationship. There are shelters where they will just sit down with you and talk with you about it. So, you can listen to me talk about this all day, but I'm not there talking to you. Although, if you don't have anyone to reach out to, please reach out to me. I'll happily talk to you about it. But talk to someone about it. Reach out and, at least metaphorically, dial 911. I want to talk about why people stay in relationships. even relationships that just aren't all that happy. Because again, not every not every relationship you should leave is abusive. And that's one of the things that actually keeps people in relationships that aren't nourishing who they are, that aren't supporting them, is, well, it's not actually abusive. It's just unpleasant, you know? And I think the idea that you should only leave a relationship if it's abusive is actually a trap. A lot of people believe that they are obligated to stay in a relationship, that they said they would, they promised, wedding vows, or they just said to someone, I'll always be there for you. And now they're not happy in the relationship, but they can't leave because they promised. Or they think that you're not supposed to leave your partner when things are tough, and things always seem to be tough. It doesn't have to be abusive to be not good for you. And so one of the questions that you should ask yourself, and by the way, side note here, regardless of whether you're in a relationship you're happy in or not, a relationship you feel stuck in or not, a relationship you want to leave, or a relationship you want to cling to forever, take a minute and think about these things. Because you're probably going to think that way no matter how wonderful or awful your relationship is. Most of us are in really wonderful relationships. So you know what happens? We look at these questions, we pull down one of those lists, we read it with, thank goodness my family isn't like that. I am so lucky that my wife doesn't humiliate me in front of our friends. Oh my God, my husband has never even raised his voice to me, much less his fist. You really, if you're in a healthy relationship and you consider whether you're in a healthy relationship, you get nice reassuring answers like, yes, I'm in a healthy relationship. And if you're not, then you really need to look at it. So actually, I'm really serious here. At the end of this talk, Google some things, Google signs of a healthy relationship and signs of an abusive relationship, and read them and consider, is this me? Because there's no downside. If you're in a healthy relationship, you'll feel reaffirmed and you'll really appreciate how great your partner is, because there's so much not like people in bad relationships. And if you're in a bad relationship, you'll have a chance to look at it and see that, which you wouldn't normally, because one of the things that I know from being in an abusive relationship is that it's really important to not look at things. It's really important when you're in that relationship, it's really important to not look at things, because if you look at them, then they look really awful. So I spent a lot of time not looking at things, making excuses, or just avoiding it, denial. It's not just a river in Egypt, as they say. So for your peace of mind and my peace of mind, take a few minutes and just consider this. So what makes a relationship not worth being in? Well, one of the things is, are you happy? Does it bring you joy? Are you glad to see your partner? Do you look forward to spending time with your partner and your friends? Side note, one of the really signs of a really unhealthy relationship is where you never see your partner and your friends at the same time. They don't like spending time with your friends. They don't like you spending time with your friends. Because, well, one of the things that people in unhealthy relationships do is try to isolate their partner and try to not have their behavior be visible. A great question to ask yourself is, if I were at the doctor's office, would my partner be treating me this way? If my best friend came to visit for a week, would things change in how my partner treats me? Because a lot of things can become the new normal, can seem like they're just the way things are, until you put another person's perspective on it. Which, by the way, is another great question to ask yourself. It's how would I react if? How would I react if I saw someone treating my best friend this way? How would I react if someone were treating my kid this way? Because we'll put up with things, treatment for ourselves, that we would never in a million years let someone do to our kid, our best friend, our mom or dad. If you heard that someone else was in a relationship where every time their partner saw them, their partner gives a little sneer and said, "Oh, finally you're home. Oh God, I see you didn't do the laundry again." What would you say? Would you take your friend aside and go, your wife shouldn't be talking to you that way. Your wife should not be making you feel small and sad. If someone said to you, "I'd talk it over with my husband, but I'm scared how he'd react. He'd get really mad and then he'd stop talking to me for a week and it would be awful." Would you say, "Oh, well, that's just a part of a normal, healthy relationship"? I really hope you wouldn't, because if someone's scared to talk to their partner because of how they'll react, that's not a healthy relationship. Good, clear communication is essential to a healthy relationship. Um, if your partner watched this talk, would they get mad? If they knew you watched this talk, would they get mad? If you said to your partner, "I saw this really great talk on healthy and unhealthy relationships, will you watch it with me?" Would you be scared to do that? Would doing that make you think, "Wow, I mean, she would hate that. That would be really, really awkward." Or, "No, she just get mad at me or she doesn't want to hear that kind of thing. It's a waste of time. She says it's a waste of time." Well, that's a good sign there's probably something wrong. If you feel relieved when your partner is not there and nervous about how the next interaction is going to go, you should consider whether it is time to leave that relationship. Another really good question to ask yourself is why you are staying. I really love my marriage and my wife. And I can tell you exactly why I'm staying in my marriage. It's because my wife is, well, I mean, there's the beautiful and the sexy. That's always nice. But also, she's honest and loyal and trustworthy and trusting. And she comes to me and tells me when there are problems. And she encourages me and comforts me when I'm looking for a job and I just can't find one. She's like, "Well, we'll figure out a way through." She's honest with me. I'm really scared about that, but I know you'll figure it out and we'll make it through together. You know, when I get a migraine, I get migraines sometimes, and she does not say, "Oh my God, we have to cancel again because you have a migraine." She says, "Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry. Can I get you an ice pack? Did you remember to take your migraine pills? You know, is there anything I can do to help?" I stay in this marriage because my wife is an amazing mother. But there are other reasons people stay in relationships. Economic dependence. I stay in this relationship because at least I have a place to live and food to eat. And if I left, I'd be homeless and I'd have nothing to eat. I'm scared of change. I mean, I've been married for 25 years to the same person. Who knows what'll happen if I don't have them? My life is just all over the map. Who knows? You think you'll never find anyone else or anyone as good for you or better for you than this. This is your one chance for happiness. Special secret notice: no one is your one and only perfect soulmate. No one is your only possible choice. If the reason you are in a relationship is because you'll never find anyone better, you should probably leave that relationship and find someone better. Because one thing that relationships aren't about is about settling. Well, I guess I can tolerate being married to this person, so we'll stay married. I'm not saying leave, but I'm saying fix that. And if you can't fix it, leave, because that is no way to spend decades of your life. Being with someone who you're with because you can't really picture something, you know, I mean, it's not really supposed to get better than this. This is just, you got to shrug. My mom always, always put up with my dad. I mean, it's just how it is, especially, by the way, if your parents didn't have the best relationship, you probably have skewed ideas of what a good relationship looks like. Think about the people you know who have really good relationships, people who are clearly loving to each other and support each other, who they never talk about each other behind their back. They're, "Oh my God, I hate the way he," you know, because nobody should be tearing down their partner. I mean, yeah, they might be, bitching to their best friend, and that happens, and that's okay. But if the minute you're out of the room, they are rolling their eyes and telling everyone how you're always late just like this, that's probably not a very healthy relationship, even if you're always late just like this. If you're staying because you think other people would disapprove, well, my mom always said that divorce was a failure, and I refuse to fail. You know, if you think they'll never find anyone better, that's an interesting one. Well, I can't leave my relationship because they'd be alone and they would never find anyone. A, you're wrong. And B, almost anyone, including no one at all, is better than being with someone who is only there because they think you're an obligation. Imagine if you knew that your partner was only there with you because they thought you were an obligation of theirs and they had to stay even though they hated it. Well, if you find yourself in that place, do them a huge favor and leave. If someone is really miserable being your partner, why would you want to help them be miserable? Leave. Because one of the things that unhealthy relationships sometimes have is a partner who says, well, I promised for better or for worse, and so I'm going to stay with you even though it makes me miserable. There's a thing called Darvo, which I'm going to summarize it as an abusive partner blames you and says you're abusive and makes you believe it. And one thing you'll hear is them going, oh, my partner is so abusive, but I can't leave. Or, oh, you are so abusive to me. To which the answer is, well, then obviously I shouldn't stay here abusing you. I should go away. And you might be surprised how often the partner would go, oh, no, I have to stay. No, really, I don't want to hurt you anymore. Don't be that person who's staying just because you think your partner needs you. If that's the only reason you're there, do them the favor of not being there out of duty and obligation and making yourself miserable. There is duty in a relationship. There is obligation in a relationship, but it's not the only thing. So if the reasons you are staying are all the wrong reasons, give yourself permission to go. And that's a big thing, actually, is giving yourself permission to go. There is no relationship that you are obligated to stay in no matter what. There isn't. There are some that I think you're pretty much obligated to leave. If your partner punches you, it's a great relationship to not be in ever again anymore. Get the hell out. But there's no relationship you have to stay in. One of the things that people do sometimes is they trick their partner into saying, I'll always be there for you. And then their partner, who has promised to always be there for you, can't leave no matter how you treat them. My abuser really, really played on that one because I would make promises of loyalty and love and support because that's the kind of person I am. I'm loyal, I'm loving, and I'm supportive. And then they would treat me as badly as they wanted to say, but you promised you'd love me forever and stay. And I go, oh, I guess I have to stay. No, I didn't have to stay. There's no such thing as irrevocable consent. If you're with someone in a relationship and it's become toxic and harmful to you, or toxic and harmful to them, you don't have to stay. You won't spend the rest of your life alone and miserable. They won't spend the rest of their life alone and miserable. But as long as you stay there making each other miserable, you'll be miserable. What do you do if you're in one of these relationships and you don't want to leave? You had 10 really good years with this person, and then the kids grew up and left home, and it's been miserable ever since. But you had 10 really good years. And your friends tell you, hey, this happens sometimes. You just got to stick it out. What do? Well, mercifully, thankfully, we have therapists. Couples therapists are really good at helping couples figure out how to love each other better. They're really good at teaching communication skills at teaching people how to have good boundaries so they feel safe and happy around each other while they take care of each other. And that's why the biggest red flag I know of, the absolute, this is short of punching, short of someone punching you, the biggest red flag I know of is they won't go to therapy with you. If you're unhappy in your relationship, or if they tell you they are unhappy in your relationship, but they won't go to a therapist with you, there's something very, very, very wrong. Because if my partner said, I'm miserable, I'd say, then let's get help. I sure don't mean to make you feel miserable. So if you're feeling miserable, we need to learn how to get better. So I'm not making you miserable. If I say, I'm really hurting, every time we talk, we end up fighting. You end up saying these horrible, hateful things to me, and it hurts. Come to a therapist with me so we can fix it. And they say no. Take a minute and think about what that means, that they do not care enough about your happiness to sit for an hour once a week and talk to someone about it. Because that's not something that happens in healthy relationships. It's something that happens when someone has secrets about how they treat you that they don't want other people to know. If your partner says, please don't, you really shouldn't talk to your friends about our relationship. It's unfair to me. You really shouldn't tell your friends when you're upset with me, because then when you decide it was just you being silly and you come back, it's embarrassing. You'll feel embarrassed around your friends. It's not healthy to tell someone they're not allowed to talk to other people. If you're in a relationship where your partner says, I don't want you talking to anyone about this, find someone to talk to them about it, because your partner doesn't get to control who you talk to. And honestly, if I'm doing things that hurt my wife, I want her to get the support she needs to not be made unhappy by them. And if my wife wants to talk about our relationship with other people, cool. I'm pretty sure she'll be saying nice things. So if your partner says you're not allowed to talk to anyone, that's a problem. That's a smell. Doesn't pass the sniff test. Now, some of these things seem contradictory. You shouldn't backstab your partner and talk nasty about them behind your back, but you should be able to go to your best friend and tell them about your relationship without your partner being upset about it. Where's the boundary here? Well, and the answer is basically, are their requests reasonable, and do they still let you meet your needs? If your partner says, please don't talk with your mom about our relationship anymore, because every time you do, she spends the next month making these cutting, passive-aggressive comments around me, but not to me, about our relationship, and it really hurts. That's probably a reasonable request. You have other people you can talk to. Talk to your best friend. But if someone says, don't tell anyone about this fight, it was your fault too, and that you'll get in trouble if you tell anyone, tell someone right then. My partner once pulled my phone out of my hand to keep me from calling 911 and convinced me that since we were wrestling over the phone, I was being abusive. I'm not stupid, but I sure was not functioning very competently in my own life. I sure was believing them far beyond reason. Think about that. I want to call 911. They pull my phone out of my hand, and they convinced me that I was being violent, and if the cops showed up, they'd arrest me. A healthy relationship won't try to keep you from communicating about it. Someone close to me was in a relationship once with someone who said, you need to not talk to people about our relationship because they'll say really critical things like I'm being abusive. Well, this person finally talked to me, and I was like, so let's talk. Because that partner was also, hitting them and telling them that they were actually ruining their partner's life. Again, if your partner says you're ruining their life, do them the great kindness of leaving. because odds are good they're saying that to make you feel guilty and ashamed and like you're obligated to stay and do better. And if you say, okay, I don't want to put that on you, I don't want to make you miserable, I will leave. And they say, no, 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 wait, I need you, I love you. You're not in a healthy relationship. You're being manipulated. And what if your partner really tries to change? Because people can say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll do better. There's something called the cycle of abuse. They do something abusive, you try to get away, they come with flowers and candy and apologies and say, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. You come back, they do it again, you start to leave, they come to with flowers, candy, and apologies. And this pattern can go on for a long time. But sometimes people really do want to change. They go to therapy with you and they put the work in and they try, and they still keep failing. One of my closest friends said to me when I was preparing for this talk, be sure you say, at some point, even if they're doing their sincere best to change, even if they're putting in all the effort anyone could ever ask to change, at some point, if they still aren't changing, that effort doesn't matter. It isn't enough. If your partner is not able to be in a relationship with you that is nurturing and nourishing to you, that helps you grow, that brings you joy, that supports you, it doesn't matter whether they're telling the truth about trying to change. They may be trying to change. At some point, you have to say, this hasn't changed. I needed it to change. It hasn't changed. And I need to not be in this relationship because it's not healthy for me. Look at where the emotional labor is. Are you doing a huge amount of being patient and tolerant and spreading oil on the troubled waters, and they're just doing whatever they want, and you're getting exhausted, and the relationship isn't improving? You're probably not in a healthy relationship. One of my close friends again said to me, look for grooming signs, like little dishonesties or episodes of anger that they don't explain or apologize for, or that they say they're sorry, but they keep on doing it. Because one of the things that people who are aiming to abuse you is they'll test the waters. They'll yell at you once and say, oh, I'm really sorry. Do you stay around? Well, then they can probably yell a little bit more. And that's the other thing is people stay in a relationship sometimes because, well, they're sure it'll get better. Even though they're miserable, even though they hate the way their partner treats them, surely it'll get better. If your partner is treating you badly and you're miserable and they're not willing to go to therapy, put in the work, whatever that looks like, it won't get better. It'll get worse. It'll only ever get worse. Don't stay around waiting for an abuser to decide it's a good time to stop abusing you, because they don't. They just go up little step by little step, frog boiling. Is your daily life being affected? Are you anxious all the time? Are you, are you losing interest in things? Are you feeling hopeless and helpless? Sometimes those just happen. But if they happen the most when you're thinking about your partner or spending time with your partner, you probably have a problem that's worth looking at. I'm going to wrap up really soon here, but I want to check my notes really quickly to make sure I didn't forget anything. Let's see what I got here. If you ever find yourself saying to someone, now this is going to sound like an abusive relationship, but it's not a healthy relationship. I have never once had to say to someone, now, don't get this wrong, my wife and I have a really great relationship, so this may sound bad, but really, no, I don't have to do that because my wife and I have a really great relationship. And if we have when we have problems, we talk them out gently, lovingly. We find solutions. We negotiate. We don't compromise and give up things we need. We work things out so we're both getting what we need. So if you find yourself pre-warning people not to think it's abusive, there's a reason you're having to pre-warn them. I had a friend once who, when we were just becoming friends, said to me, now I want to be really clear here. calling my partner abusive is something that is a hard limit in our friendship. I cannot be friends with you if you tell me my partner is abusive, because I'm sick of losing friends because they just keep telling me my partner is abusive. Bing! Right then I knew their partner was abusive. Yeah, sure enough, their partner was abusive. I finally ended up, after we'd been friends for a while, ended up going, I read this really interesting list of signs of an unhealthy relationship on a website. And they called me back a couple of days later and said, I'm a little worried because I read this list and it sounds a lot like my relationship. And I'm like, huh, interesting. So I'm not going to tell them they're in an abusive relationship. I agreed that I would not tell them that they were in an abusive relationship. But I'm going to make it easier for them to tell me that they're in an abusive relationship. Because if someone says, I don't understand why everyone keeps saying my partner is abusive. Their partner is abusive. The odds that someone is surrounded by people who tell them how abusive their partner is unanimously, and their partner is really sweet and loving, I suppose it could happen, but I've never seen it. Think about it again. If your partner saw this talk, would they hug you and say, we're so lucky. I'm so glad you're not like this. Thank you for treating me well. If you don't want to show them this talk because they sit there and glare and be like, I don't know why you go to this stupid church. All they do is tell lies. Well, talk to someone. Seriously, talk to someone. And again, there are things that mean you need to leave the relationship right now. Run, don't walk. One of those is physical violence. If your partner hits you, if your partner punches the wall next to your head, if your partner smashes dishes and throws them across the room and screams, that's not a healthy relationship. Someone does not need to hit you on the daily in order for it to be an abusive relationship. If they hit you once, you're going to be scared every time they do this. Every time you're going to be scared because one time they hit you when they did that. And our brains are really good at learning that's not safe. If your partner hits you, you need to leave. Seriously. Your partner tries to stop you from leaving a situation. You're like, I want to go now, and they block the door, or they grab your arm and say, you can't leave. That's not okay. Quick note, you have the right to leave a situation, just like you have the right to leave a relationship. And no one has the right to block the door or grab you and stop you from going. If that's happening to you, you're in an abusive relationship and you need to find someone you can talk to who's safe and ask them for help. Partner says, if you leave, I'll kill you. Or if you leave, I'll kill myself. You can't stay in that relationship. It's not safe. Now, if they say that, you need to leave very carefully. You need to have a safe place to go where they can't find you because they might mean it. That people do sometimes get killed when they try to leave an abusive relationship. But there are shelters that will keep you safe. That will help you find a place your partner does not know about and cannot find out about. So if you're in one of those situations, leave. I think that's actually everything on the list of stuff I wanted to say. Yeah. Ask yourself these questions. If this were happening to my husband, to my best friend, if this were happening to my mom or my dad, if my coworkers were here right now, would my partner say that to me at work? What about their coworkers? Would they say that about me? Would they say this to me at their office? Well, no, because around everyone else, they're always very nice and friendly, polite, kind. But when we're alone, whole other story. You should leave that relationship. You always have the right to leave. And if your relationship is not bringing both of you joy, nourishing both of you, making both of you better people, helping you both to grow, then you and they both can find a better relationship. And you should think really seriously about either fixing your relationship, by which I mean going to therapy and getting the help you need to become a couple that actually do support and love each other successfully, effectively, or you need to leave. And Ask yourself, could you watch this talk with your partner? Because if the answer is no, they'd hate it, no, they get really mad, then your relationship has a problem that needs to be addressed. I hope that this talk was useless. I hope that no one here needed to hear this. I hope that everyone hearing this talk is like, I know, I know, I know. I'm so glad that my partner is so gentle and tender and loving and kind. That would be great. I hope I've wasted all of your time, but I'd be really surprised. You deserve a relationship that brings you joy. You deserve a relationship you feel safe in. You deserve a relationship with someone who has your back, who tells you when you're full of crap, and also says, so let me help you. Your partner doesn't need to agree with you all the time. You're not right all the time, so your partner shouldn't agree with you all the time, but your partner needs to always be on your side. That's really important. Your partner should be working with you to make sure both of you have the best, most growth positive, most supported life you can have. If that's not happening, it's okay to leave.